How much time do you spend practicing saxophone? It's never enough to play the way you want to, right? I'm going to show you a technique that I've been using to get better on the saxophone. You can use this on any musical instrument, and it's going to save you countless hours of practice time. I've been doing this for years. It really works. It costs nothing, and it has other benefits outside of music. In fact, you can do this anytime, anywhere, and you don't even need your saxophone or instrument. It's called visualization, or just playing in your head. Now, I used to think that playing in your head like this was only for very advanced musicians, but now I know that every level of player can benefit greatly from doing this, even total beginners. And I'm going to break down the way you can use this technique into 3 different levels. Lately, I've been practicing in my head just before I go to sleep, when I turn the lights off, close my eyes. It's kind of meditative. I'll just choose something to practice, go through it a few times, and it always eases me into sleep and helps to clear my mind of any other thoughts. The first level is just the fingerings. This is where anyone who has never practiced this visualization should start. It takes a bit of time to develop speed with this, so at first just go real slow. If you're a beginner and you're just learning the fingerings of the saxophone, doing this is really going to speed up the process for you. When you're away from the horn, just visualize yourself playing each of the notes you already know on the instrument. You just make a mental picture of the saxophone and the key layout and where your fingers go. Do this slowly, and also think about having a nice relaxed position when you're playing. Yes, you're just playing in your head, but you also want to visualize being totally relaxed. Your shoulders, your neck, your arms, especially your hands and fingers. You'd be surprised at how effective it is visualizing yourself practicing really relaxed. When you then go take your real saxophone, you're going to play more relaxed. Now, if you're a more advanced player, you can use this level 1 of just the fingerings to work on Altissimo. Altissimo is when you're playing the really high notes above the palm keys, and they all have kind of weird fingerings. So doing this visualization practice on just your Altissimo fingerings is going to save your ears and your jaw, which can kind of take a beating during a long Altissimo practice session. Once you get used to what it's like to play all the different notes in your head, then you can move on to scales and arpeggios. When I was a freshman in college studying music, the first thing I had to do was learn how to play all of my major and minor scales in all 12 keys across the full range of the instrument. It took me a lot longer to learn this than it really should have, because I was only able to practice it when I had the saxophone in my hands. If I had known that I could just practice at any time, I would have been able to learn all the key signatures and the fingerings, especially on the difficult keys, at any time throughout the day. You can do this when you're driving or walking to class. You could do this on the bus or on the train. You could do it when you're washing the dishes or any other household chores. You can even do this instead of mindlessly scrolling social media or binging Netflix shows or any other behavior you do too much, which you'd rather do less of. And remember, don't just think about the fingerings. To get the maximum benefit out of this, you also want to be thinking about playing with really relaxed hand and finger position, with those fingers staying in close contact with the keys as much as possible and just resting very lightly on them. The more you do this away from the horn, the more it's going to benefit you when you've got that saxophone in your hands. And in my experience, the time spent practicing away from the saxophone can actually be more efficient sometimes, because we're taking away some other variables, like the whole sound production thing. Now, I don't recommend you physically move your fingers when you're doing this visualization. The whole point is that everything's happening in our head. You want to imagine that familiar feeling of your saxophone in your hands and the way it feels to move each individual key. You don't want to try to approximate it on some other physical object like a bottle of water or something. Now, if you think it's all a bit far-fetched and not something you could do, try doing it first with a physical activity you're already really good at. Close your eyes and imagine yourself walking. You could do that, right? Imagine yourself jogging or riding a bicycle or swimming. You can imagine any one of those things perfectly and exactly how it feels to move each part of your body, right? So I recommend that everybody at every level tries practicing things like scales and arpeggios using this visualization technique. Number one, it's because it's the stuff we all need to get down. And number two, if you're learning that stuff away from the saxophone, then when you are practicing your saxophone, you'll have more time to spend on repertoire or improvisation or whatever is a bit more fun than just practicing scales and arpeggios. But speaking of tunes and improvisation, we can visualize that too. That's level 3. Now, if you don't think you can do this, I'll prove it to you right now. Let's take the song Mary Had a Little Lamb. Everybody knows that. I want you to close your eyes, start on B, first finger B on the saxophone, hear the melody in your head, and play it on your instrument in your head. B, A, G, A, B, 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 A, B, D, D, right? And it's okay if you don't get it exactly right. You're gonna be able to get it mostly right the first try, I'm sure. Go nice and slow. Imagine yourself moving your fingers, hear the notes that are coming out of your instrument. It's easy, right? If you could do it on Mary Had a Little Lamb, you could do it on any other song. And I know what you're thinking, Jay, yeah, that's fine for an easy tune like that, but when the melody is more complex, how am I gonna know which notes are coming next? And that presents an amazing opportunity to work on your ear training, which is going to level up your musicianship faster than just about anything else. You see, piano players and guitar players, they're doing this all the time on their instruments. They're hearing the note that's coming next, and they can actually sing along with themselves as they play their instrument. I find that saxophone players, myself included, are often relying too heavily on muscle memory or knowing that the next note they're going to play is a safe note, but not necessarily having heard it in their head before playing it. Personally, I use this a lot if I want to take a line through all 12 keys. It might be a pattern, it might be something that I'd play over a 2-5-1 chord progression, and I'll know what it sounds like in my head, and I'll play it in one key and then take it through the keys and go around. And usually before I even get through all 12 keys, I'll probably have fallen asleep. But I find that later on, when I pick up the saxophone, that thing that I practiced is already there. It's already under my fingers. This visualization method can really be transformative for anyone who sticks with it long enough to start getting the benefits. Yes, technically it does count as time practicing, but it's probably going to be time you would have been doing something else anyway. Please let me know your thoughts on this. Do you practice visualization on your instrument, and how do you do it? Of course, we still need to spend a lot of time practicing with the physical saxophone, especially to develop a beautiful sound. So I want you to go watch this video next, where I give you 8 tips on how to get a beautiful tone.